I have bad news. You are not special. You are not unique. Nor are you alone in your suffering. And as much as you wish it were true, it is not true that no one understands you. Now, you have a condition. In fact, if you're watching this, it's very likely that you have two conditions. The first is alcoholism, and the second is terminal. Terminal uniqueness. The desperate desire to think that you personally watching this, are in some way different or entitled to unique or deferential treatment. That your problems are different from everyone else's. And that if you were to share them with us, none of us would relate to them because they are so uniquely personal to you. I'm sick of hearing that from other alcoholics in recovery. That you somehow don't fit the model of a normal recovery program, or that you don't relate to the other people in AA. You find their stories hard to navigate because they're not like your story, are they? Yours is worse than everybody else's. Yours is so entirely personal that it's not possible that anybody else in the world could possibly comprehend what it is that you are going through, because your problem is unique. Nobody understands me. When I go to AA and share, I feel like the room doesn't understand me. I feel like their experiences are different. I feel like they're worse. I feel like I'm worse. I feel like I'm taking up everybody else's time, and that because their problems are worse than mine, I don't deserve to share my problems with them. I'm wasting everybody's time because my problems are unique. They're uniquely big, or they're uniquely small, or they're too personal, they're too idiosyncratic, and if I share them, nobody will understand because nobody understands me. Heard it 1,000 times. Now, before I get started, I'll acknowledge my own weakness here, that I am absolutely guilty of terminal uniqueness. I started an entire YouTube channel to talk about my problems. Such is my self-centeredness. Such is the magnitude of my narcissism that I point a camera at my face once a week and I tell thousands of strangers interesting things about alcoholism. So if you're going to criticize me, believe me, I am aware of the hypocrisy. But for so long, literally years, even years before I actually made any concerted effort towards sobriety, I considered myself different. That's why I didn't go to AA for so long. It's why I resisted treatment for so long. I was so up my own arse, thinking that no system would suit me, that I didn't try any system, when in fact it was an excuse to not try. I made assumptions about what treatment was like, whether it was AA or SMART or whatever it was. All of these things, Buddhism and religion and spirituality and neuroscience and all of these things. I decided that the factors influencing my alcoholism was such a completely nuanced and personal, idiosyncratic complex of symptoms that I can't possibly fit any existing recovery model. When I would tell myself that, and I would tell my loved ones that. I don't want to go to therapy because it's not for me. It won't work for me like it works for everybody else. When really it was an excuse to not try. I knew what worked for me. Alcohol. And I would make up any excuse, and I would defend my uniqueness so vehemently that it prevented me from trying any kind of treatment. Just fed up of hearing it this week. I'm just fed up of people saying, like other people can go to meetings and that's fine for them, but it's not for me. You know what's not for you? Trying to making any genuine effort towards sobriety. That's what you're resistant to. You're not resistant to sharing in the rooms or to devoting yourself to a certain philosophy or a certain system of sobriety. You just don't want to try. And you're hiding behind this feeling of uniqueness. They don't understand my trauma. My history is different. Sure, I'm an alcoholic like them. I drink like them, but my history is different. And therefore the treatment won't work for me. The amount of thousands of millions of people who've walked the path successfully before you, just statistically, one of their drinking patterns, one of their cycles of addiction is going to be close to identical to yours. And they made it out. You're just making excuses. Throw another excuse on the pile of reasons why you won't even start trying. Sorry, I've come out hot today because I am going through a very severe bout of depression, and also I'm very angry. And I've had a flurry of emails recently off the back of that Lad Bible thing. So my content escaped my normal echo chamber, which is always a dangerous thing. And it reached a mainstream audience. And a lot of you who watch me regularly and comment regularly, and on my Patreon as well, where we have very informed conversations about sobriety, we all kind of know each other, right? And we're all on each other's wavelength to one degree or another. But when one of my videos makes it out, escapes, is allowed out into the actual world where normal people exist, I get this flurry of mainstream comments and questions. And it reminds me, I get in this little bubble of bad country that I've created for myself. I'm used to very insightful and nuanced questions and comments and stuff on the whole. And then a flurry of emails from normal people will remind me just how bad the understanding of alcoholism is, and how everybody, when they start out with sobriety or when they're thinking about it, they're all asking the same questions. They're all saying the same things. I've spent a lot of time this week. I've stopped replying to emails. I've taken a bit of a break from it for a couple of days to think about why. Where does this desire to be special come from? Where does this terminal uniqueness come from? What does it mean? Why is it so common to alcoholics that we all think that we are the only one who is going through this? Well, let me hit you with a made-up theory. This is a bad country theory. This is pure speculation. And as soon as someone contradicts it or has a better argument, then I'll disown it. But I'm going to share my little theory with you anyway. So the theory is this. I believe that this feeling of uniqueness that a lot of alcoholics share is a way of protecting our ego, right? So being an alcoholic, that is to say, having a condition that feels beyond our control, is quite threatening to our sense of self, to our sense of identity. We tend to think of ourselves, or at least most of us, enjoy thinking of ourselves as being capable and having the capacity to achieve things and to largely be in control of our own decisions. But alcoholism takes all of that away. And that's hard to reconcile with the image we have of ourselves as people who are in control of our lives, of people who are capable of making good decisions. And because of that threat, because we feel so threatened by this massive thing in our life, this massive, dark, sticky ball of negativity, which is addiction, because that's so overbearing, and because we don't know why it has such control over us, we invent this kind of narrative, this kind of tapestry, that it must be so uniquely, impossibly complex and personal to us that nobody else can possibly understand it. Does that make sense? So let me say it in other words. Let me try to be less poetic. The reason I fail, the reason I keep drinking, is because my situation, mine, is uniquely complicated. That's why I'm an alcoholic. It's not because I'm just dependent on this particular substance. It's because my circumstances are out of my control. They are too complicated to understand. And that lie, that misunderstanding, it's not fair to call it a lie. Let's call it a misapprehension for now. That misapprehension, it allows us an explanation. That's an explanation beyond the fact that we are weak, or that we are vulnerable, or that we are suffering from a mental health condition. Saying our external circumstances are so complicated, it allows us a little bit of breathing room to say, it's not my fault. That misapprehension is a way to protect and preserve our ego. Whereas saying something really honest, like, I have a very complex condition, but it is treatable if I am willing to try, that takes humility and that takes vulnerability. And that's why it's difficult to say. That's why it's easier to say, I am unique and nobody understands me. I know firsthand, intimately, what it is to feel like a tortured artist. So many alcoholics think that they're a tortured artist and that they have all of this creative potential inside them. If they weren't so constrained by circumstance, all of this potential would be unleashed, but they have to stamp it out, and then they drink in the frustration and the lack of fulfillment and the lack of satisfaction. When in fact, we are not tortured artists. Most of us are just middle-aged alcoholic accountants and chefs and I don't know what else. Normal people. We are just normal, dumb humans, all of us. None of us are really exceptional. I just see the world differently, man. No one understands me, man. Shut up. My suffering gives me depth, man. Sounds stupid when I say it like that, doesn't it? I hope I'm making some of you uncomfortable. And for what it's worth, if I am making people uncomfortable, you also have my sympathy. And I have to be sympathetic to myself, too, in that phase of terminal uniqueness. Because there's a lot of shame that comes with it, right? Of feeling misunderstood, of feeling unfulfilled, not knowing why. Because what that can make you do is retreat. This feeling like we are underappreciated in our own time, as bullshit as that is, it has real consequences. And one of those consequences is that we retreat into privacy. Alcohol becomes our refuge. To make a long story short, we retreat into alcohol out of feeling misunderstood. Even if it's untrue that we are misunderstood, the belief that we're misunderstood is powerful enough to have real-world consequences, and it can compound our drinking. That's what happened to me, is that I was so terminally unique. I felt like I was so exceptional, and that I couldn't explain my story. This is kind of common with PTSD a little bit, I think, is that you have no ability to explain your experience, or no willingness to explain your experience to anybody. And it makes you lonely. It makes you isolated. And if you're self-medicating with alcohol, as I was, then the drinking creates more shame. And then that shame compounds your feeling that you are different. And that's just another spiral, another cycle to throw on top of the pile of cycles of addiction and alcoholism. I also think it's why quite a lot of alcoholics can be quite charming or persuasive sometimes, quite convincing. That there is if you're one of these people, I wonder if you know what I mean, but in public, with groups of people, you can be quite funny and articulate and and charming, and you can navigate social groups relatively well. But your private self, when you're alone, is very different. And it's compounded by like self-hatred and alcohol and feeling disgusted with yourself. There's also a part of this. There's this kind of feeling that we are special or unique can divide our identity into two. One is the public-facing version of us, which is quite gregarious and relatively capable. And then there's a private version of you, which is a closed door and closed curtains, obliterative drinker. I think that was true of me. And if you're nodding right now and you're going, yeah, that does sound familiar, this is what I mean about terminal uniqueness. It's because there are hundreds of thousands of us right now exactly like that. You're not unique. Unless, of course, you are. In which case, you are. Of course, it does kind of fail sometimes. Back when I was going to AA, I went to one in Berlin, and I had this habit of not sharing very often. I would just sit quietly and listen. I found that to be more valuable, and I don't like talking in front of groups of people, ironically. But I did once. I piped up. It was an anniversary of this group. It was like kind of becoming my home group, I suppose. And they were having some kind of anniversary in the group. I forget what. But it happened to be the third anniversary of the day that I went to prison in Kazakhstan. And I thought today would be a good day to share something about myself. And bearing in mind, I'd been quiet, relatively quiet in that group. Been attending regularly, but never really said anything. And I raised my hand to share. And I was like, congratulations on the anniversary. I also have one today. Today is the third anniversary of the day that I went to prison in Kazakhstan. And the group went, audibly. And I've never felt so fucking rotten in all my life. That it immediately confirmed my sense that my experience was different from everybody else, when that is exactly the opposite of what I wanted. It is true that some experiences are worse than others objectively. I hate to say it. I know that it's no competition, obviously. But some stories do stick out. One of the most important milestones in my sobriety was beginning to understand that I was not special. That no matter how outrageous or disgusting or depraved my drinking was, or how crazy my alcoholism was and how destructive it was, the pattern, there was always a pattern. The pattern is always the same. Minor details change between people's stories, but the progression of alcoholism is largely the same for just about everybody. It forks off in certain places, like depending on what you're drinking. Like, for example, a hard liquor drinker's fork will be different from a beer drinker's fork and stuff like that. But on the whole, the pattern is the same. The consequence is quite often the same. And learning to let go of my sense of uniqueness benefited me way beyond sobriety. I think it was that in particular, that really made me able to empathize with other people's stories. Slightly letting go of my own ego, my own self-centeredness, my own narcissism, and listening to other people's stories. And learning to understand that, yeah, details differ. But alcoholism is almost always the same. Okay. I'm sorry the mood is funny today. Like I said, bit of a depressive period and weirdly angry about everything. So, if you'd like to discuss this more, please do head over to the Patreon where we can have a conversation about it. That's patreon.com/backcountrysober. Otherwise, please do subscribe here if you haven't already, and leave comments and your thoughts about terminal uniqueness. Tell me if you think that I'm too harsh about this kind of stuff and whether I should be more empathetic. I'm always interested to hear other people's opinions. Check out betterwithoutbooze.me. That's a very full-featured sobriety assistance app. And as always, thank you for watching, and good luck out there.